Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories, because new doors keep opening, and you won't want to be left out. Comment now. Where are you watching from? Your city could be the next to hear the whispers from the house. The road leading to Granger Hollow disappeared under a persistent fog, even at high noon. It wasn't an abandoned road, at least not officially, but nobody in the nearby town liked to pronounce its name. On the map, it was just a grey line leading to an old property. In real life, it was a place everyone avoided looking at for too long. Ethan Crowley drove with his hands firmly on the wheel, though his fingers were stiff with tension. An investigative journalist from Boston, he had built his career debunking paranormal hoaxes and exposing religious frauds. A staunch skeptic, he believed that every haunting had a human explanation: greed, manipulation, or mass hysteria. Still, there he was, crossing a road that no one dared to travel after sunset. Holloway House appeared in the distance as a crooked silhouette. It wasn't Gothic, nor spectacular, just old, wood darkened by time, asymmetrical windows, a porch that creaked even without wind. The kind of house that didn't need legends to seem wrong, but which ironically was surrounded by many. The property had belonged to a family that disappeared 20 years earlier. No bodies, no suspects, no answers. The police classified the case as voluntary abandonment, but the residents of the area never accepted that conclusion. Since then, the house had remained empty. No buyer, no tenant, no attempt at renovation that lasted more than 3 days. Ethan parked the car in front of the rusty gate. The engine shut off. Silence enveloped everything. No birds, no wind. Only the distant sound of something creaking, wood against wood, coming from the house. He got out of the car, closing the door carefully. He carried only a backpack, a camera, a recorder, and a notepad. No crucifixes, amulets, or mystical paraphernalia. For him, terror always originated from humanity. But there was something there that didn't make any sense. The gate was ajar. Ethan frowned. According to the files he had read, the last maintenance crew hired by the city had locked everything up before abandoning the project. The padlock should have been there. But it wasn't. He pushed open the gate. The metal protested with a sharp groan. The stone path led to the porch, covered in dry leaves that didn't look fresh. Some were green, as if they had just fallen, although there weren't enough trees around to explain that. Each step brought him closer to the front door, and the closer he got, the more he noticed a disturbing detail. There were marks on the wood, scratches, small cuts, as if someone had counted days, or years, or something worse. Ethan ran his hand over the marks. The wood was warm, strangely warm despite the cold weather. He instinctively recoiled. It wasn't fear, it was surprise. Madeira didn't get this hot without direct sunlight, and the sky was overcast. A muffled sound came from inside the house. It wasn't wind, it wasn't creaking wood, it was something like a human sigh. Ethan activated the recorder in his pocket, more out of habit than belief in ghosts. He approached the door. The doorknob was loose. He just had to turn it. He hesitated for just a second. Not because I believe in curses, but because his instinct, the one that had already saved him in dangerous investigations, told him that that house didn't want visitors. Nevertheless, he went in. The door closed by itself behind him. The door slammed shut with a dry click, and Ethan stood motionless for a few seconds, not out of fear, but out of caution. His eyes slowly adjusted to the dim light. The light filtering through the windows was weak and greenish, filtered through old glass that distorted the exterior. The air smelled of damp wood, mixed with something metallic, like rusted iron. The hallway was spacious but uneven. The floor creaked under her weight, betraying every movement. To the left, a living room with furniture covered in yellowed sheets. To the right, a staircase that curved upwards, although the steps were not symmetrical. Some were taller, others narrower, as if the house had been built without following any pattern. Ethan picked up his camera and began recording every detail. The investigation that had brought him there wasn't just about the house, but about the authorities' failure to solve the Holloway family's disappearance. His readers expected facts, not legends. He intended to deliver exactly that. On the back wall of the lobby, there was a large portrait, an entire family painted in muted tones. Father, mother, 2 children, and a grandmother, all serious, all looking directly at whoever observed the painting. The artist had not signed the work, but something caught the eye. The pupils of the figures were painted in a deep black, without any reflection, lifeless eyes. Ethan approached. He ran his fingers along the frame. Thick, old dust. But in the center of the painting, over his mother's face, there was a clean mark, as if someone had recently touched it. He wrote it down in the notebook. Signs of recent visit, padlock missing, door open, paint cleaned in a specific spot. The silence was absolute, but it didn't feel empty. It felt expectant. He began exploring the rooms on the ground floor. The kitchen still had dishes on the table, stained glasses, rusty silverware, as if the family had simply vanished in the middle of a meal. But the newspapers said the house had been emptied after the police investigation. So why did everything seem untouched? In the corner of the kitchen, an old radio rested on the counter. Ethan turned the dial. Nothing, no power. Still, the dial moved on its own, stopping at a non-existent frequency. A low hiss began, very low, but constant. He hung up immediately. The hissing stopped. She climbed the stairs. Each step seemed to react differently. Some creaked loudly, others made no sound at all. In the second-floor hallway, the doors were lined up, all closed. Except for one, at the end of the hallway, which was slightly open. Before heading towards her, Ethan entered the first room on the left. It was a child's room, faded blue wallpaper, a teddy bear on the bed. A metal toy car on the floor, everything frozen in time. In the closet, small clothes were organized by size. There was no sign of hasty abandonment. Everything was in order. In the second room, another childlike setting. This time, pink wallpaper. A doll sat in a wooden chair. Its glass eyes reflected the dim light in an almost human way. Ethan recorded everything, but the feeling of being watched grew, not as paranoia, but as a persistent awareness, as if the house possessed a consciousness of its own. At the end of the corridor, the door was ajar. He approached slowly. He pushed. It was the master bedroom. A large bed, 2 bedside tables, and on one of them, a leather-bound notebook. Ethan opened the notebook. The pages were filled with a single sentence, repeated hundreds of times, with handwriting that worsened as the pages went on. The house won't let you out. He flipped through it until the last page. There, just one different sentence. If you're reading this, she's already noticed you. The recorder in his pocket turned on by itself. The dry click of the recorder activating itself echoed in the silent room. Ethan looked at the device tucked into his jacket pocket. The display blinked, registering sound. He hadn't touched it. Without wasting any time, he manually turned off the recorder. The click that ended the recording was followed by another sound, coming from inside the cabinet. A slight dragging, like fingernails scraping wood. Ethan took a step back. His heart raced, but his mind searched for practical explanations. Rats, wood expansion, old plumbing, anything that didn't involve the impossible. He opened the cupboard. Empty. Just hanging clothes hangers and a strong smell of mold. No animals, no object that could justify the noise. Upon leaving the room, the hallway seemed longer than before. Not much, just enough to cause discomfort, as if the perspective had shifted almost imperceptibly. He walked to the stairs. He went down. When he reached the ground floor, he noticed something that hadn't been there before. The portrait of the Holloway family had changed. Before, all the faces were serious. Now the youngest child was smiling, a smile that was too wide, teeth painted with excessive sharpness. The mouth seemed cut off from the canvas. Ethan approached, comparing it to the photo he had taken minutes before. He opened the image on the camera. In the photo, the child was not smiling. He swallowed hard. There was no trickery of the light. There was no distortion. The picture had changed. The logic began to fail. He decided he needed concrete evidence, something that could rationally explain everything. Maybe someone was in the house. Maybe it was staged. Maybe the legend had been fabricated to keep curious people away. Ethan called out loudly, "Is anyone here?" Her voice sounded muffled, as if the house had absorbed the sound. No response, so steps, coming from the upper floor. Slow steps, heavy, human. Ethan gripped the camera tightly. He ran up the stairs quickly. The hallway was empty. All the doors were now closed, including the door to the master bedroom, which he had left open. He opened the door. The leather notebook was no longer on the table. In its place, there was only an old iron key, and on the wall, written in something dark and cool, "You entered of your own free will." The metallic smell in the air grew stronger. Iron. Blood. Ethan stepped back. His feet touched something on the ground. He looked down. The teddy bear from the children's room was there, dirty, damp, and a dark liquid was dripping onto the floor. He listened again, the same human sigh, but now right behind him. Ethan turned quickly, camera in hand, ready to record whoever was behind him, but the hallway remained empty. Still, the air felt displaced, as if someone had just passed by. The cold intensified suddenly, sending shivers down his spine. He took a deep breath. Rationality was still his anchor. If there was someone in that house, he needed to find them. If there was no one, then he needed to prove that too. He decided to try something simple. He left the teddy bear in the middle of the hallway, aligned exactly with a crack in the floor. He marked the spot in his notepad. Then he went downstairs to the living room, where there was a large window overlooking the driveway. He sat down in a chair covered with a sheet and waited. 5 minutes. Nothing. 10 minutes. The radio in the kitchen turned on by itself. The static was now louder. And behind it, a very low, almost indistinguishable voice repeated something at irregular intervals. Ethan slowly approached the radio. The voice wasn't speaking English. It sounded like overlapping whispers, like several people talking at the same time, in different directions. He turned off the radio. The voice continued, now coming from inside the walls. Ethan immediately stepped away. His observation plan had failed. The house didn't follow any predictable patterns. He went back up the hallway. The teddy bear had moved. He was now leaning against the door of the master bedroom. Ethan hadn't heard any sound. He wrote it down with trembling hands. The object changed position without any observable intervention. Upon touching the bear, he noticed it was heavier, as if something were inside it. He carefully cut a small seam along the side with a pocket knife. A folded piece of paper fell out from inside. It was a page torn from the leather notebook. The handwriting was different from before, older, firmer. They didn't disappear. They were preserved. Below is a sequence of dates, all corresponding to years in which people in the region had been registered as missing. The house wasn't just for the Holloways. He kept them all. Ethan then heard something new. No steps. Laughter. Children's laughter coming from the next room. He opened the door quickly. The room was exactly as before. Doll in the chair. Bed untouched. But now there were tiny handprints on the wall, painted with the same dark liquid. They went up from the floor to the height of a child. In the center, written in crooked letters, "We'll play until you get tired." Ethan's wristwatch beeped. Dead battery. Impossible. He had charged it that morning. Time didn't work properly there. Ethan understood that this was not just an unsolved police case. That house operated as an active entity, collecting people over the decades, hiding them from any investigation. And now, he had entered voluntarily. Ethan put the iron key in his pocket. If there was a part of the house where it had all begun, he needed to find it, even if it meant going down to a place where no one has ever returned. The basement door, which had previously been locked, was now open, dark, waiting. The air coming from the basement was different. Not just cold, it was ancient. Like the smell of forgotten books in a library closed for decades, mixed with something organic, alive, breathing slowly in the dark. Ethan turned on his cell phone's flashlight. The beam of light revealed wooden steps worn by time, footprints, many. Small, large, dragging marks, deeply etched, as if they had been made over years of continuous use. He started to go down. With each step, the cell phone signal weakened. No internet, no network, only light. Upon reaching the bottom of the stairs, he found an underground corridor. It wasn't shown on any architectural plans available in public records. The house was supposed to have only a small basement for storage, but this was extensive, long, excavated in the red earth of the region. The walls had old electrical wires held together by rusty clips. Some were still conducting electricity, flickering irregularly. In the first room there were dozens of photographs pinned to the wall. Families. Children, couples, men alone, smiling women, all people who had disappeared from the region over the course of 40 years. Some photos were yellowed, others were recent, very recent. In the center of the room, a table. On it, several old tape recorders, all marked with dates. One of them was still turned on. Ethan pressed the play button. A woman's voice filled the room. "If anyone finds this, the house isn't haunted. It's hungry, and we feed it." The recording changed. Another voice, a male one. "We didn't die, we stayed. The house learns, it copies, it speaks with our voices now." Another change. Child's voice. "I don't want to play anymore." The recorder turned itself off. Ethan then realized there were no ghosts there. There were real people once alive, trapped for decades. Their disappearances were never solved because there were never any bodies. The house didn't kill, she kept it. He moved on to the second room. There, chairs. Many of them chained to the floor by rusty chains, some still bearing recent signs of use, worn leather belts. On the floor, remnants of dried food, water in buckets. Everything indicated regular maintenance. Someone was taking care of that. It wasn't a supernatural force. He was human. And then Ethan heard footsteps behind him. This time, they weren't inexplicable echoes. They were firm footsteps, controlled, real. He turned around slowly. A man stood at the top of the basement stairs, tall, thin, wearing simple clothes, stained with dust and something dark. His eyes reflected the flashlight beam with animal intensity. The voice came out calm, without emotion. "You took longer than the other journalists." Ethan kept the camera raised. "Who are you?" The man smiled slightly. "I'm the caretaker. The house needs feeding, and now you've arrived alone. Of your own accord." Ethan understood, too late. The mystery wasn't supernatural. It was worse. He was human, and it had been real all along. Ethan kept the camera pointed at the man at the top of the stairs. The light from his cell phone flashlight partially illuminated his face, revealing skin marked by deep wrinkles and old scars. His eyes didn't have the agitation of a lunatic. They were steady, convinced, like someone who believed he was fulfilling a necessary function. "You're recording," said the caretaker, looking at the camera screen. "Great. The house likes recordings. It learns better that way." Ethan didn't answer. His mind was racing. There was no supernatural entity. There were no inexplicable forces. There was a man, a system, a crime that had been going on for decades. "Where are the people?" Ethan asked, controlling his voice. The caretaker tilted his head, as if assessing how much he should reveal. "They remain," he replied. "The house needs presence, human consciousness. When collective memory forgets, it weakens. Then we nourish it again." Ethan realized that this wasn't just a kidnapping. It was a distorted belief, a religion built around the house. "Do you work alone?" he asked. The man smiled. "There's always someone to learn from. I was a visitor myself, many years ago." The revelation hit Ethan hard. The caretaker wasn't just a jailer. He was a product of the house itself, a survivor who had been shaped by decades of confinement until he accepted the role. Ethan surveyed the surroundings: chains, buckets, leftover food. This meant that the prisoners were still alive somewhere deeper in the tunnel. "How many are here?" he insisted. The caretaker made a vague gesture. "Some people tire quickly, others learn to stay. The house decides." Ethan backed away slowly, trying to keep his distance. But the ladder was behind the man. There was no other way out in sight. The radio in the kitchen above them turned on again. The collective whispering of voices drifted down the walls, echoing through the basement. The caretaker closed his eyes for a moment, as if in reverence. "She realized you know too much," she said. "Now you have two choices: stay, or become part of the voice that calls the next ones." Ethan understood the true magnitude of the situation. If he disappeared there, his body would never be found. His readers would never know the truth. The house would continue to exist, fueled by new, curious visitors. His reaction was immediate. He turned on the camera for a live stream, using the last shaky cell phone signal. The image was shaky, but it was being sent. "My name is Ethan Crowley," he said, looking directly into the lens. "I'm on the Holloway property. The people haven't disappeared. They're being held here. This is real." The caretaker stepped forward. The signal dropped. The flashlight's light flickered. Ethan heard the sound of chains moving deep within the tunnel. The house had accepted its new guest. Darkness enveloped the basement for a few seconds. When the flashlight came back on, Ethan was no longer in the chain room. He was in a small room with bare earth walls, lit by a yellowish lamp hanging from an exposed wire. The door was made of iron. It had no internal handle. He had been locked up. The cell phone was in his pocket, but there was no signal, and the battery was rapidly draining. The camera had been removed. The recorder was no longer with him. The journalist was now a prisoner. For several minutes, he tested the door. He shouted. He punched the metal. Nothing. No response. The sound was swallowed by the surrounding ground. There was no echo. The house knew how to silence itself. Ethan took a deep breath. Panic was useless. The same instinct that had allowed him to survive dangerous investigations needed to take over. He surveyed the surroundings. No windows, no exits, just the lamp, a thin mattress on the floor, and a bucket of water. But in the corner of the room, something caught his eye. Marks on the wall. Small scratches made with fingernails or sharp objects, hundreds of them, some grouped in sets of 5, counting days or survivors. Ethan touched the marks, some recent, others very old. He realized something crucial. No one would survive that long alone there, without developing method, discipline, and adaptation. The caretaker wasn't just crazy. He had learned how to survive confinement. And now Ethan needed to learn too, but with a different goal: to escape and expose everything. Hours passed. He didn't know how many. The clock was dead. The light went out for a few seconds and then came back on. When it returned, there was food by the door. A simple plate, bread, water, real, tangible, organized. The system had a routine. Ethan ate little, just enough to maintain his energy. He kept some of the bread in his pocket. He observed every detail. There were no visible cameras, no clear ventilation, but the air was renewed. Soon there was an exit somewhere. When the light went out again, he acted. Using the metal piece from the mattress support, he began to scratch the floor, marking the time between the light cycles. He counted, he measured, he calculated. After 3 cycles, he noticed a pattern. Whenever the light flickered, the outside corridor was also illuminated for a few seconds, enough time to open doors in other cells, feeding, changing, movement. He needed to be ready for the next cycle. When the light flickered again, Ethan forced the metal plate against the lower door latch. It wasn't strong enough to break, but it managed to dislodge the screw holding the lower plate in place. The light flickered again. Footsteps in the hallway. The caretaker unlocked the outside door to leave fresh food. The instant the door opened, Ethan attacked, using the metal as leverage. The man didn't expect resistance. He fell backward. Ethan stepped over him and ran down the hallway. Shouts echoed behind them. Doors swung open. Hands emerged from the darkness. Some prisoners tried to escape. Others simply watched, apathetic, broken by years of confinement. Ethan ran without a clear direction, simply following the tunnel that rose slightly. The air grew colder, more humid. Then he saw in the distance an iron ladder, the exit. But before reaching her, a child's voice echoed in the tunnel. "You will return, just like he returned." Ethan didn't stop to look. He climbed the stairs 2 steps at a time. The door at the top was unlocked. He emerged from the forest behind the house, under the night sky. Book, but with something that could never be forgotten. The house was still there, and now he knew what he needed to do. Expose everything, or history would repeat itself. Ethan didn't stop running until the house disappeared among the trees. His lungs burned. His legs trembled, but he didn't slow down until he reached the main road. When he finally dropped to his knees on the cold asphalt, the sky was beginning to lighten. He was free, but the feeling of victory was short-lived. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket. Even without a signal, the screen lit up by itself. A single video file had been saved in its memory. The live stream he had started in the basement. The video was incomplete, cut off at the moment the caretaker advanced, but enough to show the interior of the house, the chains, the photos of the missing, the man's voice, real proof. Ethan smiled, relieved. Then he realized something. The video had been sent. There was an upload complete icon. Even without a signal, the house was still connected to him. He wasted no time. He got in his car and drove straight to the police station in the nearest town. The officer on duty listened to his story with initial disbelief until Ethan placed the video on the table. The policeman's face paled. 2 hours later, cars were driving up Granger Hollow Road. Sirens broke the silence that the house had maintained for decades. Ethan watched everything from afar, sitting on the hood of the car. The sun had already risen. The fog was slowly dissipating. But when the police broke down the front door, something unexpected happened. Nothing. No prisoners, no tunnel, no current, no underground rooms. The house was empty. Just old furniture, dust, the Holloway family portrait, nothing else. The police captain left, annoyed. "There's no basement," he said. "The house has a shallow floor plan, no underground structures. Are you sure you weren't under extreme stress?" Ethan didn't reply. He just opened the video again. The recording was now different. Where there had once been corridors and underground rooms, now there were only ordinary walls and a small, empty storage area. The images had changed, like a portrait. The evidence had disappeared. The captain returned the cell phone. "I recommend rest." Perhaps he got lost in the woods and was hallucinating. Ethan knew it wasn't true. His muscles still ached. The taste of rust was still in his mouth. The marks from the chains were still on his wrists. But there was nothing left to prove. That night in his hotel room, Ethan opened his laptop. You tried to write the article. Nothing made sense without evidence. Then he listened. The same sound, the human sigh, coming from the hotel hallway. And then a message appeared on the screen, typed by itself. "The house learns. The house moves on." Ethan slowly closed the laptop. He had escaped, but it wasn't over. The climax was near. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat on the hotel bed, light on, suitcase packed. He was no longer the skeptical journalist who had entered Holloway House looking for a fraud. Now he carried a certainty impossible to prove. The evil he had found wasn't confined to that building. It was connected to him. When the sun rose, he made a decision. If he couldn't prove it to the world, he needed to destroy the source. He returned alone to the road to Granger Hollow. No police, no cameras, no live stream, just him, a backpack, and a gallon of gasoline bought in the last town. The house remained in the same position as before, immobile, silent, as if it had never been invaded. The gate was closed again, new padlock, shining. Ethan broke the padlock with a stone. He went inside. The front door opened without resistance, as if welcoming him back. Inside, everything was exactly as it had been on the first day. The portrait, the covered furniture, the silence. But now, something had changed. The Holloway family portrait no longer showed 5 people. It showed 6. A new face had been painted alongside the family, Ethan's face. He didn't hesitate. He poured gasoline down the hallway, the stairs, and the bedroom doors. The strong smell spread quickly. Then he heard slow applause, coming from the top of the stairs. The caretaker was there, or rather, not just him. Behind him, men, women, and children, all with empty stares, all recognizable from the photographs in the basement. The missing in flesh and blood, silent, obedient. "You understood your role," said the caretaker. "The house needs someone to maintain it. Now you've come to complete the cycle." Ethan lit the lighter. "The cycle ends today." He threw the lighter to the ground. The flames rose quickly, very quickly, as if the house had been dry inside for decades, waiting for that moment. The group didn't run away. They just watched. The caretaker smiled. "Do you think fire liberates us?" he said. "The house isn't made of wood. It's made of memory." The ceiling began to collapse. The heat was unbearable. Ethan ran for the exit, but when she reached the main door, it didn't lead to the balcony. He took him back to the hallway. The house had doubled in size. He tried another door, and another. He always returned to the same place. The fire didn't touch him. The flames stopped inches from his skin. Ethan realized it too late. The house could not be destroyed from the outside. She needed to be fed from the inside. The caretaker approached calmly, now surrounded by the missing people. "Welcome to the next stage," he said. "You revealed us to the world. Now you will keep us hidden." The voices merged into a collective whisper. The same human sigh he had heard at the beginning. The light went out. Months later, Granger Hollow Road was once again just a forgotten line on the map. No news, no active investigation, no official alert. Holloway House remained in the same place, intact. No signs of fire. No sign of forced entry, as if nothing had happened. In the neighboring town, a new journalist arrived at the simple roadside hotel. Young, ambitious. He was looking for stories that could launch his career. At the reception, he casually inquired about local legends. The attendant hesitated before answering. "There's an old house. They say an entire family disappeared there, but nobody talks much about it. It's not worth the effort." The journalist smiled. Mysteries were always worth the effort. That same night elsewhere, a post appeared on an obscure internet forum. "The truth about Holloway House will finally be revealed. Stay tuned." The post was signed, Ethan Crowley. But Ethan had officially disappeared months earlier, after abandoning his investigation without a trace. Inside the house, on the second floor, the master bedroom remained lit by a single yellowish lamp. On the table, a new leather notebook lay open. The handwriting was firm, recent. "The house won't let you out." Below, another sentence. "But now I understand." The portrait of the Holloway family remained on the wall, and beside them Ethan's face was smiling. Not a forced smile, more serene, accepted. The cycle continued. The following morning, a car pulled up in front of the rusty gate of Holloway House. The young journalist got out, carrying a camera and a backpack. The new padlock on the gate was already open. He hesitated for only a moment, finding the situation strange, but continued along the rocky path. On the balcony, the main door was ajar. From inside the house came a muffled sound, a human sigh. The journalist turned on the camera and went inside. The door closed by itself behind him. And so ends the story of Holloway House. Or perhaps it just begins again. If you've made it this far, it means you've walked through every hallway of this house with us. You've felt the silence, heard the whispers, and realized that some places don't need ghosts to be haunted. Now we want to hear from you. What do you think really happened to Ethan Crowley? Is a house just a place, or is it something that lives through people? Share your interpretation in the comments. Your theory might reveal details that went unnoticed. And if you enjoy intense, macabre, and mysterious stories, don't forget to follow this profile and share this narrative with anyone who also loves a good suspense novel. In the end, the house learns, and now she knows you.